Welcome to the show, to A Voice and Beyond, Joyce Anastasia. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's an honor to be here. It's great to see you and
Oh,
to be connecting again.
yes, I know because we connected a few weeks ago and I was totally fascinated by your work. Love what you're doing. And by the way, I'll say this now. I'm definitely going to be having some sessions with you in the coming weeks, but obviously for our audience, they don't know what you do unless we have some listeners who are aware of your work. First up, where are you based?
In Mill Valley, California, it's just north of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So, Joyce, you serve as a transformational leadership consultant with over 20 years of experience in multidisciplinary psychology, creative arts, business, and leadership. You're an educator, a writer, a visionary activist, and your lifelong passion is to inspire new ways to lead by wisdom, co creating a more peaceful, resilient, and loving world. You've traveled extensively, bridging Western and Indigenous cultures. Wow, that is a lot. So many different hats, and I'm not even sure where to begin, other than let's start breaking all of this down. And I don't even know when you sleep and how you get to sleep at night with all this work. So let's start with your background. Where does your journey begin? What came first?
Well, I would have to go all the way back to my childhood, Marissa.
Yes.
I really feel like I was kind of primed to be following a path of being in service of humanity, not just people in my family or just securing my own life path, but for other people. And the reason I say that is I came from a family of 5 children. My parents are each from families of 13 and 11
Wow.
children,
Mm-hmm.
a very, very large family. And when I was growing up, there was this sense of being self-reliant and connecting with source at a very, very young age. So I was felt gifted with intuitive understanding, messages from beyond when I needed help. Um, Oftentimes my parents were so busy that they couldn't really give me the help. And it wasn't that they didn't want to, it's that they had many plates that they were juggling. So I developed at a very young age a really deep connection with, I would say, Great Spirit, God Source, all that is, this deep, deep spiritual connection. And from that place, I made decisions, even though sometimes they were hard, even though sometimes I was criticized. For example, using intuition at a very young age often gets described as having a fantastical mindset and making fantasy of what you're experiencing. Well, that was not the truth of how I experienced it. I was hearing and seeing spirits who had already passed on. I was receiving messages to help people that I was around, even at as early an age as 5 years old. So when I got older and was making decisions about what to do, I knew it would need to involve helping others. I also knew it needed to involve non-prejudice. So opening up my heart to all other cultures and all other beings. As I had been prejudiced quite a bit as a child, I had scoliosis, so I had to wear a back brace for a long period of time. ostracized at school because of that, and many other things. But I was fortunate that, not that it was easy, it wasn't easy, but I knew that being prejudiced against was not the most important thing, like a thing to fight against, but actually something to help to fuel where I placed my attention. And how was I going to lead my life? Was I going to lead it out of fighting things or embracing the gifts that I had and embracing others with gifts, moving through those oppositions? So that's what led me to study at the master's level counseling psychology, fine arts. I wanted to study parapsychology. I chose not to because of fear of it being used in a way that I didn't feel might be positive in our world. So I do it on my own. I use it in everything I do,
Yes.
the use of psychology. And my work with people now involves their uniqueness. It is a customized way to work either individually or in their groups or teams or families. I travel to do that. During COVID, that had to be curtailed, and then it was online. But there's a lot of gifts that can be exchanged online relative to the how-tos and bridging the intuition and logical tools to walk this planet in the most beautiful ways possible, contributing to oneself and others. And really, truly, my heart is to help to create a better place to live on a planet that is kind of ravaged right now. There's a
Oh,
lot going on.
I often say I feel as though the world's going mad at the moment. It
Yes,
feels that way. There's terrible wars. There's so much grief. You know, we've just lost the Queen of our Commonwealth. There's just a lot of us suffered a lot of personal loss. But there's a story that you shared with me that I've shared with many other people about you. And that was one, and I'd like you to share it with other people here on the show about what happened to you when you were 5
yes,
with the boy in the playground.
yes, I'd be happy to share that. So, as I was mentioning before, my gift of intuition was something that I just felt was a natural thing. It was just part of who people are. And occasionally I would share it with others, just thinking it was normal. So at 5 years old, I was on the playground, and a little classmate of mine was on the uneven parallel bars. And he was playing in a way that was not, he wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. And as I was looking at him, everything blurred out, and suddenly I saw a vision of him falling off the uneven parallel bars and dying. And it so stunned me that I felt in my heart that I needed to tell him
Mm-hmm.
and warn him, because I felt like I was being gifted with this to warn him that if he paid more attention, he wouldn't get hurt. So I went up to him and shared this with him. And as I was doing it, the teacher on the playground overheard me and started yelling at me
Mm-hmm.
for having shared this story. And she just said, "Don't ever do that again." Well, 2 weeks later, we're on the same playground. I'm watching this little boy, and I could feel in my body attention, like, pay attention, pay attention. And literally, I was yelling out to the boy because he was doing exactly what was in my vision. He fell off the uneven parallel bars in the same way and passed away that day.
My gosh.
And it was, if you can imagine in my little heart and
You had
being,
5.
how disturbing it was in so many ways, that I, of course, cried. And rather than the playground teacher comforting or anything like that, it was a literal screaming and stay away, stay away. And of course, she had to handle this little boy having fallen off. But the terror I felt inside was unbelievable. And literally, I was kind of swept up in this spiritual support from the unseen realm saying, Joyce, calm down. It's okay. We are here to support you, even when those in physical form cannot, for whatever reason it is, adults or children or whatever.
Yes, yes. So as a child then you were having visions and you're having these most intuitive moments. Did they frighten you? Or
Well,
did you understand that what fear was? I suppose we all know fear even at that young age. What kind of emotion or feelings did you have when these more disturbing visions came to you?
well, initially, like when that happened, of course, I had a multitude of emotions. First, I wanted to help. Second, so there was this desire to run out and do whatever I can, but I was 5 years old, and it's hard to catch someone and make something not happen. The second was a tremendous amount of fear, of can why am I able to see this? And why, if I'm able to see this and share it, could I not stop it from happening? And then the last thing was, then on top of that, being accused by this playground teacher of having caused the event. That just added another layer. So it took me quite a bit of time in dialogue in the unseen realms and with my parents and other teachers to sort it out and say, is this a gift or a curse? For a while as a kid, I just asked God, source, all that is, stop. I don't want this anymore, whatever this is, because this does not feel good for me. But that changed almost immediately because there were so many gifts to it. The gifts of that gift, the gifts of having intuitive understanding. It just bridged so many things in my life, helped things to make more sense, even though that wasn't the total goal of having that gift. And so I never ended up suppressing it more than a couple of days until many years later. When I was around 21 years old, I had started my first business called Second Sight. And I had been seeing quite a few clients during that time. And one client
What was
had
that
me
business?
read.
Sorry, what was it that you were
It
doing in this?
was an intuitive consulting business
Right.
where I strictly using readings to work with people and receiving messages from the other side to share with people to help them in their lives with questions they had. So this one person who I knew well came to me to ask me these questions, and I delivered a message that she did not want to hear. And it was very, very challenging for her to hear the answers or the messages. And she just basically said, this can't be possible, it's not true. And that's when it was a blasting of emotions, so much so that I asked that this gift be removed.
Right.
It was just, I felt like that was an example of it doing harm, and I did not like physicians. I felt like my work as an intuitive consultant or any counseling whatsoever was on a similar path. Do no harm. Do harm.
Yes, yes.
And so I forced myself for about a year. Yeah, I think it was about a year, maybe even 2 years, to suppress that gift for a period of time. And I kept being asked by spirit, no, you've got to use this gift. You've got to. And I did this interesting thing as if I could do a deal with, the unseen realms. But
Yes.
I said, if you can demonstrate to me that did not do harm, then I am not going to continue to use this gift.
And what happened?
About a year later, yeah, it was literally about a year later, and and the person refused to talk to me for that time. She called me up, and I had moved several times, so we were out of touch, and she didn't know where I lived. She found me, and she told me what had happened over that year, and it was related to a death and why a death had occurred. And she called me up and she said that she found out that everything that was delivered through me was accurate. And she called to apologize. Not that I needed her to apologize,
No.
but I was so grateful to hear that it did no harm, that it was intended to prepare her for learning all of these things about the person who had died. And after that, I vowed that I would never give up my gift again
Yes.
because I felt like it was a very powerful message. Just before she contacted me, Spirit had come to me 3 times to help 3 different people. And I refused for the same reason I just described a minute ago. And I said, well, here's where, if you can demonstrate that it did no harm, I'm not going to do it. And that's when she called me. She literally called me like that night or the day after. And it literally brought me to tears because I felt like I just needed to know that.
Yes, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Now, people may say this is a lot of woo woo, right? And this woman, she talks to spirits, she's talking about all these things. Now, I know that you are very highly qualified, you're an academic, you have a PhD.
Not a PhD yet. I'm
Oh,
in the process. I'm
you're
a
in,
PhD,
okay,
but
okay,
I'm really close.
okay. So you're close to being awarded a PhD. So you're researching everything that you do has been backed by science.
Yes.
Has that academic journey hampered your work where you start to doubt what you're doing? Or does it give you faith that, no, this is right? No, 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 I'm okay here. I'm not woo woo. I'm not crazy person. I, how has that fitted into the world that you had come from as a child?
Okay, so this is really a great question. I never felt like I had to prove myself,
Mm-hmm.
even though people wanted me to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say to your question is, not only did my academic pursuits help in supporting foundationally what was going on, but I have researched so much about parapsychology and about psychology and the workings of the human mind and being that it delights me to say things to you and your audience like, were you aware that almost every single president in the United States sought assistance privately from someone who does intuitive consulting? Did you
No,
know that?
no,
Yeah. And of course, that's not going to be in mainstream news. You're not going to read on the front of the Washington Post that our presidents have done this, right?
incredible.
And this and this reminds me of when I first started to do this professionally, and I was at a chamber of commerce. There were primarily men in the group because that was the nature of the chamber of commerce. And I did a presentation on bridging between concrete ways of leading in business with intuition, and how could that be done in a way that would minimize this notion of the woo-woo factor
Mhm.
and allow for what it actually creates is the manifestation of our creative sparks as human beings, both men and women. So I was doing this presentation and it was a workshop, so it was interactive, and all of these men were participating in these processes of evoking their intuitive responses. It was fascinating and beautiful to witness all of them. And you could tell they were getting all excited because it would bring solutions to problems that they had been carrying for weeks, either at work or at home, to the forefront. And they were actually developing solutions in the moment as we were doing the workshop, and I could see their sparks. So at the end, I asked them if anyone would like to sign up for a free consultation, because that's what I was offering as a result of their participation in this group. About, I think, 7 men raised their hands, and all of them said, my girlfriend, my wife, my this, my that, would love to have a session with you. Can we sign up and you make a session with them? And I
Wow.
said, of course. But what ended up happening is that they were so afraid of demonstrating to their colleagues that
Ah,
they were interested in coming, that not a single one of those 7 people sent their wives or girlfriends, but it was them who wanted to. And I share that with you and your audience because there is no shame and blame in doing this. This is in recent research on business practices, are those who hire, they're not looking for big name schools anymore. They're not looking for, they're getting the best qualified person with numbers and tracking. The number one qualification that they're looking for in so many arenas is, are they creative? Creativity.
really?
Because yes, because what creativity demonstrates is that they are open to learning new things. They are likely MacGyvers, people who can troubleshoot when things go wrong and not only have one way to do something that has proven to work, but they're exploring new ways that things may or may not work based upon whether they can try it or not. And the whole notion of being very observational and able to get along with a team,
Yes,
being discerning.
yes.
How can we be discerning about matching personalities on the team so that it becomes a dream team instead of people who are fighting over who's better than one another?
So this work that you're doing, is that part of your transformational leadership coaching?
It is.
Yes.
It
And where are these clients coming from and how do they find you?
They're coming from all areas of the globe, but how I find that people come to me most or they're referred to me is by word of mouth, actually. So they'll come to me. Typically, the open door or the crack in the door is that they come in for a personal issue first.
Mhm.
And then they find out that the way that I work is very unique and allows them to be transparent and authentic about their whole life and their work life. And then they'll invite me to their company to work with their team or work internationally. Before COVID, where I would fly to different areas. And in some cases, even certain, yeah, I'm going to say certain people who are part of indigenous tribes or people who are heads of companies, CEOs, vice presidents might call me in to actually work with their families
So on a
because
personal level as well.
on a personal level as well. So they might call me in to their families. Have had several, you know, first of all, I want to say how courageous it is for someone to do that, number one. Number two, to trust me enough to come and be with their family, knowing that it's like looking in to the back end of something that's extremely personal and might be extremely embarrassing for
Mm.
people to reveal. But the truth is that every human being in every human family experiences problems, every single one. And so to be called in, be courageous enough to call in someone who is willing to look at the whole family as a dynamic process makes me feel very hopeful about our world.
Mm.
Because what it says is, I am not going to spend my time separating that I'm one way at work as a CEO or a vice president, and I'm another way at home. And I'm going to treat my family horribly or beautifully. And then at work, treating work people horribly or beautifully. It needs to be integrated. And when it is, they support each other. When things are going well at home, then it allows for energetic and prana and food for the senses to come into a person, and the person becomes vitalized by it and then can go into work with more energy, more vitality, more care, more concern about what is happening in the work life so that things don't get totally out of kilter.
Mm. So many questions come to mind. So, what I'm getting from you is that usually people are either wanting a problem solved or they're looking to transform their lives. Do
Yes.
you do that through spirits coming into the room or do you do it by asking questions? Is there a process that you usually use or is it case by case?
It's normally case by case, but I'll tell you the general gist that happens.
Yes.
When a person gets referred to me, they'll come to me and I'll ask them to bring 5 questions they don't know the answer to
Interesting.
related to
Mm-hmm.
their challenge. And no matter what it is, if it's a personal challenge, if they're having relationship issues, if they're having addiction problems, if they're having problems with grieving, if they miss their, if I'm actually thinking about my family, my sister in particular, who lost a son to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so challenging.
Of
So
course.
she had such a tough time finding someone who can help her to process through it. So I was so hoping that she could find someone who might be able to support her in the way that I would want to as a professional support someone. I could not serve that role because I'm her sister, but I could support her as a sister in other ways. So she finally did find someone who could. But so that might be an issue someone comes with. So 5 questions, they come in, they bring that in. We'll chat for maybe 10 to 15 minutes to kind of flesh out what that problem is. Then I will go into what I call a semi-trance for probably 40, 45 minutes. And spirit guides, master teachers, sometimes people who have passed who want to come through to help them. It could be, you know, a lost son or daughter or mother or father. That it doesn't always happen that way, but sometimes it does. And those messages are delivered. And it is to help to discern and answer those questions that were brought in. Now, oftentimes, what happens after that is a fleshing out of that in the concrete realm. Like, how could you take steps to make that
Right.
choice?
Yes, yes. Because it's one
Right?
thing to be delivered the information, but then it's how do we then process and live our lives according to what's just been told to us and
Exactly.
make changes, all those transformations, or go into that problem solving mode.
That's right. And so here's another way that I discern how I do my sessions with people. It is if someone comes to me who is really concrete, logical, they're not going to necessarily want to open up to what they might describe as woo-woo. So I work with them very concretely, but use my intuition to help inform answers to their questions and working with them. Then after they get to know me for a while and trust me, then they typically open up to this other portion that's a deeper dive into the intuitive way to access responses and answers, where when I go into deep trance, I'm setting aside my personality. I'm setting
Yes.
aside my filters that might influence. For example,
So your
if I
biases.
that's right. If I were to give a session to my sister, I'm going to have all of those personality biases of my whole life with my sister. And it'll be a lot harder for me to be able to share the experiences of listening. Well, I've also had to learn how to deliver the messages as they are intended to be delivered and not hold back, so that what spirit wants to emerge and the person needs, the match is made.
Mm, mm,
So I don't ever tell people what their futures are going to be. What I share with them is what spirit guides gift me with to see the best pathways, where it's like there's a green light to this pathway versus 10 other possibilities you can walk down. And why? The whys. You know, if you walk down this pathway that doesn't get a green light, these are some of the things that I see might happen. Just like with that little boy, you know, who,
yes.
if he was able to be more conscious about the way he played on that uneven parallel bars, he may have taken a pathway of life, or it may have been his time to leave.
Exactly. I was going to say that. It's like the movie Sliding Doors. somewhat.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing from you now is that there's people that come to you and you see that they're not living in congruency, that they're
Yes.
not on the right path. Can we all, do we all have the ability to transform our lives? And how do we know whether or not we're being congruent? How can we become more congruent?
I absolutely believe that every single human being can transform their lives. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I also believe that we could come into congruence with ourselves. And there are, I would say, I could tell you 100 different tools to do that. Like, let me just give
Mm-hmm.
an example.
Yes, that would be great.
This this is actually related to my book called Extraordinary Leadership During Extraordinary Times. And it's in my first chapter about consciously choosing power with versus power over. What a lot of people do who are out of congruence with themselves is they power over themselves. For example, if someone were to, let's say, lose their job
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic and they move into a place of fear really fast and they're desperate to get a job, but they apply to some and they know that there's one that may come through, but it's really not what they want. And they can feel it inside their gut, like they have this feeling like, oh no, if I take that, I'm going to be overworked and underpaid and this and that. But they go ahead and power over themselves because they're in huge fear of survival, which is
Yes.
natural, right? It's natural.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can learn the difference between fear that becomes irrational and pushes them mentally into that space of taking anything versus, okay, am I really going to not have food in another 2 weeks if I say no to this job? You know, it's this very strange thing that our mind does to us.
Yes, yes.
But if we can kind of take a breath, calm down, move into a place, you said coherence. For me, when I work with people, it is about having a calmness and a faith that when it is right, whatever the right is, like right choice, let's just say right choice, right decision, we will feel it in our bodies. If we're trained to feel it in our bodies, we will know. And when we don't, and when we make decisions that we know are out of fear and not out of love and coherent calmness, we're going to be mad at ourselves. We're going to
Mm,
be in cognitive dissonance. We're going to
mm-hmm.
say, we're not going to say it out loud. We're going to say to ourselves, this is what some of my clients, before they come to see me, do. And I'm just using phrases that clients have told me
Sure.
when they're just meeting me. You idiot. Why did you choose to make that choice? You knew in your heart it wasn't the right choice, and now you're in it and you're stuck. Well, and I say to them, you can always make a different choice.
Mm-hmm.
You're never stuck. It's easy to imagine you're stuck, but you're not. And here are all the other choices you can make to support you in making a healthier choice for yourself and your family.
Yeah. I 100% agree with what you're saying. In my lifetime, I have learnt to listen to my intuition. I
Yeah.
have figured out that my intuition is way smarter than my brain. And I do feel it in my body. However, sometimes it's not the right thing that I feel in my body. Sometimes it could be the wrong thing.
Mhm.
Something within a situation or being with a person or a particular decision, and you have two choices, and one choice may just feel really I feel uneasy within my own body, or I can be around people and I feel really uneasy and I feel that I have to get away from them. So I
Mhm.
sometimes have that as well, or maybe more so than, oh yeah, this feels really good. I'm not sure. Um, so people make decisions out of a place of fear. We all come into this earth, I believe, the same. We're all babies, we're all pure, we're unaffected. How do we develop this fear? Do we become so fearful during our lifetimes?
Well, it could be our environment and how we're brought up. Like if we're brought up in an abusive environment, it's very easy to accumulate a ton of fear.
Of
But
course.
it's also a means by which to develop resilience. It's kind of a crazy contradiction. So those people who were brought up in a more abusive environment sometimes could actually become very well versed in tuning into their intuition
Mm,
and make choices much more easily than those who might not have, because life is, I'm going to say air quotes, easier,
yes,
right?
yes,
But also, um, our world is pretty filled with a lot of fear-based media. We're constantly seeing things on television and movies that are based upon fear and aggression and warring and violence, and who wouldn't be afraid of that, right? So it's almost as if our society has been set up to create more negative stimulation instead of positive stimulation. So we have to relearn, unlearn what we've learned, and then relearn that operating out of fear actually brings us into rather poor decision making because
absolutely.
it's knee jerking versus let's take a moment to quiet ourselves and interiorize and listen in to that still small voice within us, because likely it is going to guide us even in micro decisions to make healthier choices,
Mm.
healthier outcomes, and to bring about what we hope to manifest on this planet. I, as much as we are experiencing on a very global level really horrific things on this planet, just think about how many times we're pummeled with this information versus, versus
Constantly,
right? Versus,
constantly. Yes, yes. Social media, news, it's all doom and gloom.
right. So what if we took 20 minutes out of a day to focus only on that which is co-creative and positive? Like literally, like
How do we do
spend,
that?
how do we do that? First thing, one of the things I have been telling every single client I have this week, because there were so many people who were actually negatively affected by the Queen's passing
Hmm.
and feeling really depressed, and now feeling like the rudder is removed,
Yes,
the guidepost of a direction, even with criticisms of the monarchy, etc.
yes,
You know,
yes, yes.
um, But it's a loss. It's a huge loss, just like any kind of political figure who represents a country would feel this way, right? So, what I have been encouraging people to do, a simple practice is as soon as they wake up in the morning, before they even open their eyes, but they know that they're waking up, to spend 2 minutes speaking out loud what they are grateful for. What are you grateful for? And people have told me it is so hard to initiate that. How crazy is that, right?
Mhm.
Why is it so hard to initiate,
Yes,
right?
yes.
The other thing, I was listening to your amazing podcasts and your amazing interviews, and I was listening,
Oh,
yeah, and I was listening to the one on longevity and good health. And one of the things that I noticed was, what do we put into our bodies? What nourishment do we take in? And a lot of times we can't control that, right? If we're having a rush day, we have to go out and get food, whatever. The second practice that is, for me, an absolute standard is no matter what you are putting into your mouth for sustenance, whether it be water or food or otherwise, that it be blessed, that you take 30 seconds to a minute and be grateful for the hands that went into creating it, for the soil that nourished it, for the creature that you might be eating.
mm,
And scientific research over the last decade has shown that doing that totally changes its chemistry before you even put it in your mouth.
that's incredible. And to me, that my thought right then was, haven't we become an entitled society? That's the problem. People aren't grateful. People have become so entitled that they've forgotten how to be grateful. It's almost like our planet has lost its way, and we're coming from a place of fear instead of love and instead of gratitude. What do we need to do to make transformational changes to the planet? Do we, obviously, we need to change as human beings. What can we do better to thrive as humans so that our planet can thrive?
I'm going to give a third suggestion
Yes,
to,
please.
that question. And the third is to ask ourselves, do we love ourselves as much as we love others that we really care about? And I don't mean in a
Mm,
narcissistic way.
no, I'm hearing you because this week I released a podcast and one of the on exactly about self-care, and it's learning to be kinder to ourselves, but so we can be kinder to others and to love ourselves in the way that we love others. One of the things we need to look at is the way that we speak to ourselves, because we're the person we speak to the most during the day.
That's exactly right. And not only that, but to truly ask ourselves each day, do we truly want to live our
Mm,
lives? Do we truly want to
mm,
live our lives?
yes.
And if we do truly want to live our lives, then what would we like to leave as a soul print? That was my second business name, soul print. What does that mean? Like our fingerprints, our soul prints are unique. So what parts of our gifts that we have do we want to contribute on this planet? And that could be a guidepost to our purpose in life, to how we treat ourselves, to how we
Mm,
treat others. And we can't fulfill that contribution without taking full and complete care of ourselves so that we and our cups are full, so that we could then in turn impact and help others on this planet, even whether other people describe it as minuscule or gigantuan, because the littlest things can mean so much. And as a teacher in the past and a professor at universities, you sometimes don't get to hear people's transformation, and sometimes you do. And there are times when I will receive a message from someone who I worked with 20 years ago,
Yes.
saying, your one sentence, and they'll tell me what it is, and I will have long since forgotten that sentence, but they don't. And they'll say to me, that changed my life. Well, if I didn't even know that I was doing that by one sentence I said, if we are in awareness consciously of what we're saying, thinking, and doing, without getting obnoxious about it, like we're micromanaging our expression, but with fluidity and care and consciousness of no harm. It's amazing the impact every human being has on one another. Every day.
Yes. That really stirred something within me. It made me think about legacy, that soul print. Some people may like to define it as legacy.
Yes.
Yes, and it comes back to congruency. If this is your legacy, you have to, I suppose you almost have to think about what it is that you want to leave behind, your soul print, your legacy, whatever you want to call it, that's okay. And then check in to make sure that you are living in congruence with that as you move forward through your days, as you live your days, as you live every decision that you make. Is it congruent with how I want to live my life and what I want to leave behind on this planet?
Yes.
And I think we are so busy and we get so caught up and we are so much in fear that we don't take that time. And there's that entitlement too. There's so many things, if you've already touched upon, that you wrap them up together and it makes sense. Everything that you're saying makes sense to me. And I think I just want to share just for a moment that it just made me think that my parents came to this country, to Australia, as post-war migrants with nothing. They were uneducated. They sacrificed, and they sacrificed for their children. And it was me and my brother. And it's so important to me to make the most of every opportunity and to live my life to the best that I can live my life based on the sacrifices that my parents made, and to show my children what is possible. I have 2 daughters, and to see that and to show them that you can be a strong, independent woman but still be loving and caring and make something of your life.
Yes. Yes, and making something of your life doesn't have to look like what other people want it to.
No, no, no. You have to be authentic. You have to live your life in authenticity. And you can't live your life to the standards of others. I mean, do no harm, as you said. Live your life, do no harm, but still be authentic in every aspect of your day, in how you show up in your day.
Yes. And it takes a lot of courage in a society that tends to push down the gifts and exaggerate the notion of competition.
Yes.
And I speak about this too. Did you know that the word competition originates from the word to compete, which originally meant to strive together for something.
Ah, uh-huh.
Now,
So it's
how,
togetherness, not tearing apart.
that's right. So how
Ah,
different we have interpreted and rewrote a beautiful expression
yes.
of what our world could be like. And I still witness, even though in our world we have all this uh, naysaying negativity, when you get at the heart of things, and I work with a lot of people, so when I speak to them, I speak about really challenging issues with them, but the core of every human being I've ever worked with is like that infant that you were talking about.
Mm,
It is, and I mean that in the most honoring of ways, that it is what people most want is to love, to be loved, to be able to have a roof over their heads and food on the table, to support their family, and to feel as if they're contributing something in our world. Those, I did a whole project around this where I traveled. I was going to travel to every state in the United States and ask, what are the 5 most important things in your life? From poor people to extremely rich people, from young and old, everyone said those 5 things I just mentioned. That was what was most important to them,
the
no
basic
matter what.
necessities. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And to
And
feel valued. Yeah,
yes,
is yeah, yeah. But doesn't it comes back to though we have to value ourselves first.
that's right. You
Yes.
you are absolutely right. And
Mm,
when we do, and when we do, and
hmm.
we really do, it's not just a fake thing, because
Yeah.
people do that too.
Hmm.
They pretend that they're filled with confidence. Well, confidence is different than loving yourself
Yes.
and truly caring about yourself
Hmm.
and
Yes.
what you bring into the world.
Mm,
When people move into that space of coherence, then they are able to handle the things that happen in the world. They're able to see it as a neutrally positive witness and say, well, this is part of life, and I'm not going to let it tsunami me. I am going to navigate in the best way possible. I'm not going to contribute to that tsunami for other people. I am going to take a piece of my life and help to make it a better place. Maybe
mm.
even by just a smile to someone who may be downtrodden,
Yes.
or a helping hand to walk someone across the street, or volunteering at a food kitchen, or by creating a new business because my family business was lost.
Mm.
Making a new business that really reflects who I am, right? All these
Exactly. Yes.
things are very, you'll begin to see miracles come into your life when that coherence starts to occur, you know, when there's this, like, I don't know you really well, but I have to say, Marissa, I love and care about you. I feel you as if I've known you for a really long time. And
Oh,
I know that you are at a place in your life where you really do care about yourself, and that it's okay that you express yourself as beautifully as you did a moment ago, just saying, I want to honor my parents. I want to honor my heritage. I want to teach my children uh, that they can do this too. And it's not all by doing, but it's by being
mm.
also.
Exactly. Exactly. I'd like to move along.
Yes.
This is, we could talk about this forever, you and I. I want to talk about the work that you've done with Indigenous cultures. So you've been working, traveling extensively, bridging the gap between Western and Indigenous cultures. So you want to share what that work is and who some of the people, some of the cultures are that you've worked with?
So I worked for an amazing company called the Foundation for Global Humanity. The mission of that company was to record, document, and preserve Indigenous and contemporary ways of healing, knowing, and leading in the world. And my role was as creative director. So I would help to select where we would go, who we would interview, and speak to them about their ways that they find most beneficial for our world. So we've been to Australia, we've been to New Zealand, we went to Peru and Colombia and many other places.
Mm-hmm.
And every single location, every single tribe, every single tradition, we learned so much, and we did our best to capture that in documentary filming that is on the Foundation for Global Humanity site. They're not as active now, but it is available there to discover. But one of the places that we went that I'd like to share as one example, one or two examples I'll give
Yes.
you, is we um, went to Colombia, and there are many different tribes in Colombia that are indigenous, and they were called by spirit at all at the same time, but they live far away. So this is the first thing that's amazing is they value concrete being on this planet as much as they do intuition. So here they are getting messages in their visions and in their dreams simultaneously. Those people who are called mamos, who are the leaders of those tribes, simultaneously getting a message saying, you must gather peoples from all over the globe because we have to do something about the destruction, the destructive aspects that are occurring on this planet. And please do it as soon as possible. So this was many years ago now, but they started connecting with one another. And the team that I was on, the Foundation for Global Humanity, heard about this, and we created an intro little film to invite people from all over the globe to go to this event. We didn't know exactly what would happen, but when we arrived, several things happened. The first thing they taught us was about being registered. What does that mean? Well, because they value so much intuitive practices and psychically being able to discover whether someone is genuine or not, whether someone is willing to be honestly who they are from the inside out,
Mm.
they do this process called registering, where our team, four of us at the time, had to stand in front of, I think it was 8 to 12 of these, I'm going to say quote unquote leaders, because they call them more facilitators or spiritual
Yes.
guides. And they stood in silence with straight poker faces, looking at us, looking through us to our souls, deciding, is this a person who can identify all the beautiful things they brought into the world, but all the ways in which they might have harmed someone too. And if they are willing to do that, then they will be able to handle a ceremony and an event like this, because no one is all positive. Part of our reason for being on this planet is to learn how to shine light in the darkness and to bring out those things which might most beneficially support our world. This bridges also many different traditions, like the whole notion of karma, what we bring by
Mm.
consciously doing bad things, things that harm in the world. So if we could become conscious of bringing positive, beneficial things, shining light on those negative things, then we can make a difference on this planet. So they were registering everyone that came in, and we had this ceremony, and they allowed for all different cultures to share their ways to integrate most beautifully practices that they could bring back home with them, like integrating the masculine and feminine, the whole idea of what it means for the eagle and the condor in some indigenous traditions to come together, that are natural enemies, to come together and to have peace feathers laying on top of each other, right? So just imagine that as one practice that I shared with you. And the follow-up practice was to to take um, to take time to sit down and ask ourselves, in our whole lives, what are ways in which we have harmed other people,
Oh,
consciously or
wow.
unconsciously,
Wow.
and ways that we have helped to heal people, consciously or unconsciously. What a gifting lesson that is. That's just one lesson from one tribe, or I mean, from
Wow.
one culture.
Did you
Imagine.
find did you find similarities between the indigenous cultures? Was there anything that you thought, wow, this is one concept that all of them believe in or live their lives by?
Yeah, pretty much the notion of no harm and the notion of all our relations. We are all connected, absolutely all connected. What we do, think, say, or believe impacts, even if we don't know it.
Mm,
The way we treat a plant, the way we treat trees, the way we treat creatures impacts.
yeah, yeah. Incredible. What an opportunity.
Yes, it was
And
a deep honor, a deep honor.
you have published the book Extraordinary Leadership During Extraordinary Times. So, what's the message you're wanting to share with that through the book?
There are core, what I call 7 vital keys that, if looked at within our own lives and with the people that we work with, we have an opportunity to make different choices about the way we are in our lives, how we lead, how we express ourselves. And they include miraculous, our miraculous nature, how we dynamically balance, how we express power, truth, transparency, how we bring integrity into all that we do,
Mm,
and getting back to nature. The other piece that is really critical, and this relates to my dear friend, Sequoia Trueblood, who was also one of the people who we interviewed from that Foundation for Global Humanity. He was a super soldier, and he did a whole project on um, reconciliation. This notion of when you make choices and when you end up harming people, how can we reconcile with ourselves, with our family, with our nation? And it relies on faith and belief that we are all connected, and not one religion or one type of spirituality, but that we have faith that there is a great spirit, or all
mm,
that is, unifying sense of we really all come from the same space. You spoke about your parents. Well, when you think of a universal parents, that is what I think of when I think of honoring. How do we live our lives? Were we honoring the source from whence we came?
Mm. That's so meaningful. And you've shared so many powerful messages with us today. What do you believe is your mission or your legacy?
I believe that relational spaces are so important. And one of the things that I think sets the work that I do apart from some others, and not that I want to set it apart necessarily, but that I truly honor each person that I work with. I don't see them as lesser than or better than ever. I
Mm,
see them as an incredibly vital potential human being that has every chance to live the most amazing life they choose to live. That
yes.
is really important for the work that I do.
Well, we're going to finish this up now. It's been such an honor and such a pleasure, and I do appreciate your openness and your willingness to speak about so many topics that probably, could challenge some of our listeners and their belief systems. But I think we all need to be open. In life, we need to all be open because we may find a different way or may challenge us to think and to check in with our own selves and how we can
Yes.
do better as a race, as a planet. We're going to share your links via the show notes. So if anyone wants to reach out to you and have a session with you and find out more, see what they can do better, how they can improve their lives, or have some of their questions answered. One of their, like they bring their 5 questions to you. But
Yes.
thank you. It's been such an honor having you on the show. I wish you all the very best. And this is not going to be our last goodbye. We're going to meet up in the future. I'm very keen to speak with you myself. So thank you again for your time. Good luck and talk to you soon, Joyce.
Thank you so much for your incredible vision and for your courage to do what you're doing. And many blessings in taking in what's happening with your own processes and your family, and many blessings to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.